Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about my iPad, because I want to. This is my 2020 iPad Air, my jack of all trades for the last 3.25 years. The note taker, the essay writer, the research finder, the games console, the show shower, the video editor, and most importantly, the YouTube with food machine. But is it still as superb as it was from the start? Let's talk about the hardware real quick before I go into how it handles my different use cases. Now, I love the design. It's still this impossibly thin slab of glass and metal that Tim Cook, that Johnny Ive was describing years and years ago about the iPhone, but I think it more applies to this really. You can't tell, but I went for the green one. It is a very pale green. If you got any of the colors, they'll probably look like gray in the dark. The screen is great, bright, vibrant, P3 color certified, so you can use it for your photo editing and your video editing. It is plenty bright outdoors. Only on the sunniest days will I have a hard time seeing it, but every other situation, amazing, especially in the dark when you crank it, it will light up your face. The cameras are passable. This one's good enough for document scanning. I'll usually just grab my phone though, just because it is better. The front camera is also passable. I can use it for video calls, though I usually won't. Hey, it's later in the evening and I've just come off a Zoom call. I'd like to change my opinion. The webcam's definitely good enough. It may look weird, I'm looking off to the side, but I'm actually looking straight at the screen. But it's a good camera and it works well with all of Apple's built-in effects. In terms of I/O, you get a single USB-C port, which has been enough for me. I just use a adapter to give me all of the ones that I need, like USB-A, HDMI, micro SD, although I rarely do need that since I've pretty much moved everything over to USB-C already. The loss of the headphone jack didn't really affect me. I already had AirPods when I got this, and my other headphones I just bought an adapter for. One thing to note though is it's not Thunderbolt certified, so you won't be able to use Thunderbolt hubs. It is very fast though. I'll put up whatever it's rated for here. It's held up great, so durability isn't a concern right now. I've only got some small cracks on the screen protector, but that's entirely my own fault. Now, let's actually talk about how I use this thing in my day-to-day life. Starting with productivity. It's great. It's what it was designed for. All the big productivity apps are here. Word, PowerPoint, Teams, and OneNote. Just a few examples. And it just steamrolls through everything. The A14 is plenty fast for document editing, Excel. If you use whatever your school or uni uses, it works for that. What's it called? Google Classroom. I used Google Classroom in high school and it was fine. Files uploaded, I could view stuff. One thing I will say though is that anything using the Apple Pencil will cause it to heat up a bit, just around this area here, which is, I know that's where the processor is. So anything more intense, I'm guessing the digitizer is doing some extra hard work trying to figure out how hard you're pressing and what angle you're pressing at. So maybe pack a charger if you're going to be doing a lot of work that involves writing or drawing. Now I know it's been said before and it's kind of corny, but the iPad does just do something for focus. It is my go-to when work needs to get done. For example, I had to write a report the other day, and let's just say I was far from completion with the midnight submission time fast approaching. And instead of going for the big screen or reaching for the real computer, I ended up grabbing my iPad and buckling down, getting it done in the end. The limited multi-app capabilities kind of forces you to lock into whatever you're doing. That might be part of it. Whatever it was, it meant I got my task done on time. And that's why it is my go-to for productivity on the go, as well as at home. But what about for games? Hold on, you're a little far. Get closer. Truthfully, I don't game much on this. When I got it, I was super excited to get into gaming on the iPad. The big, beautiful screen, the high performance, it should have all come together, but it just didn't for me, for a few reasons. One, I didn't want to buy more games on the iPad. I already had other consoles dedicated to gaming. I got 3 months at Apple Arcade, and I played a lot of Hot Lava, probably my favorite game on that service, as well as What the Golf and Cricket Through the Ages was hilarious. But most of the time when playing console conversions on the iPad, I just wanted physical controls. The touch controls are, as most say, passable, but I would just grab my Switch, and now my Steam Deck is the best option for playing on the go. Don't get me wrong, it is really good. I tried Genshin when it came out, and the game looked stunning. It had all the shadows and the grass and reflections, and it still ran surprisingly at 60 frames. But as I said, console ports don't really work well unless you're willing to connect a controller, and Apple Arcade, in my opinion, just isn't worth the money. Additionally, a lot of the really big games that have been ported to iPad are exclusive to M1, but we'll touch on M1 exclusives later. While gaming on the iPad was a bit of a miss, one thing that wasn't is content consumption. Okay, content consumption. It's really good. All the apps are here that you'd expect: Netflix, Disney+, Hulu for whoever's using that. And while the tall aspect ratio does lead to some pretty gnarly letterboxing in some movies, especially recent ones where they go for extra super duper ultra wide, the incredibly bright screen, high res and vibrant nature of whatever you watch on here more than makes up for it, in my opinion. I've watched a lot of movies and binged a lot of shows on this device that have stuck with me till this day, so let's just say it's good for movies. Also YouTube. This thing is single-handedly powering my YouTube addiction, and extension support on Safari means I can get around ads just like on Windows and Mac. One thing I will touch on as a weakness is social media apps. Instagram and TikTok, completely unsupported, so you're going to be stuck with a big iPhone. And one other major downside is that you can't use it for slide over, which would be perfect. Imagine having an Instagram window that you can just bring in and out. Actually, that would probably be very counterproductive. Okay, now I'm mixed on that. The other thing of note is the Facebook app. Yes, it is technically an iPad app, but I'm pretty sure it was made by one developer and they got fired a couple years back. But that's enough about leisure. What about other kinds of productivity? All right, we're here between the desk and the bed because honestly, it's a 50-50 split on where I actually edit and produce my videos. This, believe it or not, is what powers the entire channel. Videos from the iPhone are airdropped over and then put into LumaFusion to be edited. No external microphones, which you can probably tell. Now, you'll probably also be surprised to hear that I don't use a keyboard for video editing, and that's for one reason. LumaFusion was made before the release of the Magic Keyboard and the rise of keyboard and mouse on the iPad, and it was extremely well optimized for touch and stylus control. And that's exactly how I use it. It's fluid, it works great most of the time. Hello. However, this is one aspect where the iPad starts to show its age. My videos are pretty simple. One stream of 4K, maybe a second stream if I'm doing a cutaway, some music, some images. And once the video reaches a certain length, it does start to chug, heat up, drop frames. And I've had to do it a few times now for the last 2 videos where I will need to use an optimize tool to make it so that random audio doesn't cut out or the export doesn't fail halfway through. Now, I'm not sure if this is the result of the processor not being strong enough, or thermal throttling causes it to be less powerful than normal, or the RAM being only 4 gigs, or a combination of everything, but that's just how it is right now. I've also noticed a similar effect with GoodNotes. If there is a lot of handwritten text on a large document and there's some images as well, it'll start to chug. Same thing for Freeform. Not as free as I thought it was gonna be. If you try and put in a shit ton of diagrams and lines between things and words and links, it will chug and crash. And some of my biggest ones take a hot minute to open. I'll show that now. One thing that's kind of stayed rock solid is, actually, before I move to the next part, I want to talk about storage because it kind of relates to the large files that are created from video editing as well as the large files created by notes. I'm currently sitting at 190 of the 256 gigabytes. This is not accurate though, and I'll explain why. A lot of this is used by photos and LumaFusion projects, probably a solid 70 which I do intend to move over to this external hard drive. After that, I expect it to be around the 112 gig mark, which is where it was before I started making and editing YouTube videos. There's just a lot of footage on here that doesn't need to be on here. Never ever buy a 64 gig iPad. This is your PSA. 64 gigs is not enough. I don't care if it's cheaper. I don't care if you absolutely can't afford it. 64 gigs is a no-go. I made that mistake, and that's why I have 256 gigs now. Battery life wildly varies depending on the task. If I'm doing a simple task in Safari or Word, then it'll last the full day. If I'm editing videos on high brightness, then it gets cut to about 3 or 4 hours. I've noticed degradation even though Apple won't let me see how much it is, but not to the point where I think a replacement is necessary. Now, this is the 2020 iPad Air, which means no M1. And that means I'm missing out on a few things. First up is performance. The M1, not gonna lie, are significantly faster, and you also get significantly more RAM with them, which means more longevity. The iPads will probably last even longer than they already do going into the future if you buy one now. I'm also missing out on some iPadOS features. I don't get proper external monitor support, I don't get Stage Manager, and I'm also missing out on a few apps and games. One of them is Final Cut Pro, which got a lot of hype on release, but I'm fine with that. I use LumaFusion and I've already paid for it. And from reviews, it seems to be a bit watered down compared to the desktop. 3.9 is still pretty good. Another example is Death Stranding for the iPad. Massive game, wouldn't expect it to run on this, especially with the 4 gigs of RAM, but it is something to consider if you want to use your iPad for gaming. Contrary to a lot of people, I don't think the M1 is the biggest change to happen to iPad. I actually think the biggest, most substantial thing that happened to iPad was the addition of keyboard and mouse support and the keyboard cases that came soon after. It really turned the iPad into a computer. Now, I agree, Apple's "What's a computer?" ad campaign was stupid, but it was right. I remember when I first got this iPad and I was in class. At the time, I didn't have the whole keyboard case. I just had a Bluetooth one and I was using the touchscreen for navigation. And my teacher said something along the lines of, "Where's your computer?" Because it didn't have a trackpad. It was small and most of the apps looked different and functioned differently than they did on Windows and Mac. However, once you snap this on, completely different story. It is now a computer. I'm asked at uni by peers what this is, and they're always surprised when I say it's an iPad, because it doesn't look like an iPad. You know, everyone's used to the home button and just, you know, it being in a case with maybe that triangle kickstand thing, but it's come a long way, and that's because this isn't an iPad. This is. Alright, is it worth picking one up now? Absolutely not. You are much better off just going for a used 2018 iPad Pro, because they are about the same price and have way better hardware. You get the higher refresh rate screen, you get a slightly faster GPU, and just a few other little niceties. What if you already own one though? I'd say you can hold on to it. The form factor is the same, the capabilities are pretty much the same, bar a few exceptions with the M1. It does everything I need to do right now. And the initial magic still isn't gone. It's still this slim, beautifully made, durable slab of glass and metal that enamored me from the moment I opened it and took it out of the box for the first time. I'm still amazed by how much technology has been crammed into something the thickness of a lot of laptop lids. This is my opinion as of the 2nd of May. Maybe Apple will reveal some new iPads next week that revolutionize it, but the way it's looking, it seems like we're going to get better hardware, maybe a few more exclusive features, and a refresh of the Apple Pencil. Something I'm not really interested in at the moment. That's my thoughts on this and how it's held up. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you want to see more like it. Bye.